Hello and welcome. I am Lian Buon and this is Rappler Talk. The Department of Justice has submitted to President Rodrigo Duterte a partial report of the Drug War Review where they reinvestigated 5,000 deaths in the hands of policemen in the government's war on drugs. Were there abuses by cops? Was there enough prosecution? The world, especially the International Criminal Court, wants to know. In his message before the United Nations Human Rights Council, Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara said that the fully functioning Philippine Human Rights Commission is enough to make the ICC back off. But so far, the CHR says it has not been included in the drug war review. Did the DOJ mislead the international community? We have Human Rights Commissioner Karen Gomez Dumpit with us today. Hello po, ma'am.
Hi, Lian.
All right, ma'am. Puntahan natin back in June when the Justice Secretary, and I believe you were there also in the session of the UN Human Rights Council. What was your reaction when he announced the Drug War Review panel? Were you made aware of this panel?
Well, right before the session, we were made aware of it, but we heard it through the diplomatic channels, no? And and we said, of course, that this is a welcome development because this is what we have been asking for from government to make sure that all the deaths resulting from the campaign against illegal drugs, they must be investigated and they must be evaluated because there have been many, many casualties already.
But
So
when
we
you
look
heard,
forward to that.
when you heard it, because the immediate reaction from the Human Rights Watch and other human rights groups said, parang ruse siya. It was a way to say that at least the government was domestically investigating. And for the CHR, what was your immediate reaction to that?
Well, as a Commission on Human Rights, we're supposed to act as a bridge, really. And it's part of our role to always open our doors to government. Whatever measures they will take, whatever, programs that they will offer, and any hand that they reach out to us, it's always open. Our doors are always open. That's our role. We cannot shun them. We have to help them. We have to advise them, and we call them out if they don't do what's supposed to be undertaken.
Tama po ba, Commissioner? You said you were made known to this panel just right before the announcement, and it was not directly communicated to you by the DOJ, parang through
Oh
the
no,
diplomatic
it wasn't direct. In fact, we knew about it maybe a day before.
a day
Um,
before.
and there wasn't any, at the time, there wasn't really much engagement. When we talk about the campaign against illegal drugs, there wasn't really much engagement on it. And there was much less cooperation also in terms of having information on the cases that have been piling up.
Pero Commissioner, special mention ng CHR dun sa message ni Justice Secretary, if I may loosely quote him, sabi niya, the fully functioning Philippine Commission on Human Rights underpins our strong position that there's no need for any international scrutiny such as the ICC. So when you heard that, parang naisip niyo ba, bakit kami yung parang, diba, for years you have been saying ayaw sa inyong i-share ang case folder and now special mention kayo sa UNHRC. How did you feel about that?
Well, of course, maybe did they say fully functioning? What I remember is really an independent commission on human rights, no? But they have to also enable our full functioning. And enabling that will require cooperation on the investigations that have been undertaken and that have been taken into cognizance by the Commission on Human Rights because of all the reports on the killings that have happened, on the deaths resulting from the drug war, what they call the drug war.
All right, ma'am. As you said, they have to enable the full function of the CHR. Before and after, Commissioner, let's compare in details. Ano po yung engagement sa inyo ng DOJ DOJ and other government agencies before the drug war review and during, from June to January? Paano kayo in-engage, if at all?
For this administration, you mean?
Yes po, yes po. For the drug war killings.
In terms of investigation, there's no change. There's
What
no
do you mean there's no change? Hindi po kayo in-engage?
no information exchange from the police. Whenever we ask for documents, they would say, or they would show a memo saying clearance is required for any document that is asked of you from the units in the regions. What they invoke is the Data Privacy Act. But it's clear in the Data Privacy Act that if it is in the course of an investigation, and we are an investigative body as well, it's not covered there. But that's the answer that we get. And when we do ask, there's no information that's being given. So can we say that there are changes from then and now? There's none. At the case level, there is none.
Commissioner, nung pong in-open yung drug war review ng DOJ, paano po yung naging correspondence nyo between CHR and DOJ? How did it go?
Okay, so when we did present our views in the Human Rights Council last July, if I'm not mistaken, they did say that the banner was there was going to be a high-level review panel headed by the Department of Justice. 2 weeks after that, or maybe less than 10 days, we wrote a letter to the Department of Justice addressed to the Secretary, signed by our chairperson, to ask what will be our role. We're eager to know about this, and we're ready to work with you. So we did send a letter in July, and then 3 other letters followed. The last one being probably in November or December. And we have not heard. Letters were left unanswered. And then last Monday, I believe, we got word that there was a partial report submitted to the Office of the President. So we have called out government here because they did say that we will have an important role in this review panel. And this commitment was made before the Human Rights Council. That's why we said this promise is an unfulfilled promise to this day because it was made before the community of nations, and yet we are still waiting. What will be our role in this review panel? And it would have been better. Yeah.
Sige po, go ahead po, ma'am.
It would have been better to have included us from the beginning.
Commissioner, are there like unofficial, informal channels between the CHR? Hindi ba nag-uusap ang Commissioner at mga Undersecretary ni Justice Secretary para in-nudge sila na, oy, bakit hindi nyo kami gustong isali dyan sa panel na yan?
Well,
and how did it go?
We've had other engagements with them, no, on other issues, which I call softer human rights issues, no, like human rights education and training. And actually, maybe around 3 weeks prior to Yusek Perete's resignation, we were asking him already. We wrote the secretary, and we wanted to know what role we will play in the review panel. But well, he did say wala pa, or we're still preparing. He said, but then after a few days, we find out that Yusek Perete resigned. So we were saying, we're back to square one with the DOJ, even in some projects, because he was really the key focal with the Commission on Human Rights.
For the viewers, that was Undersecretary Mark Perete, who used to be the spokesperson and one of the most trusted undersecretaries of the SOJ. Balikan po natin yung past engagements. I remember covering a data sharing agreement between the CHR and the DOJ. Nagkita-kita ba kayo in person? Because I remember it was on Zoom. And ano po yung data sharing agreement? Could you clarify if that is for the drug war review, or if is that for something else?
No, that is for the AO35 committee, and that's the Committee on Political Killings, Extrajudicial Killings yon, Enforced Disappearance and Torture, no? So that one, if you take a look at the scope of the EJ case in that AO35 committee, that is really a very narrow scope on EJ case, and it involves political EJ case. No? So the data sharing agreement only covers that. And in fact, when they were negotiating the resolution that we now call the Resolution on Technical Cooperation and Capacity Building, we did comment on a draft that made it appear that the data sharing agreement would cover everything. But we did say that it does not cover everything. And to this day, I can tell you that no data exchange has happened yet. Wala pa. It was just a signing of the memorandum of agreement.
So let me just get this straight, Commissioner. The data sharing agreement for the AO35 task force, which is for political killings, kahit doon, kahit may contract kayo, wala pa ring data na nasi-share.
Well, if you take a look at that data sharing agreement, it's per request kasi. So what we did was we did request already for particular data that may be covered under that. But it's also good to say that some of our officers have been involved in a couple of meetings already after that data sharing agreement was inked. No? Prior to it, and I think there were meetings after, a couple of meetings after. So meron naman, pero wala pa ring data exchange. No?
Right.
The last time I asked our data protection officer, which is our executive director, no, and our spokesperson, wala pang data na na-share.
Okay.
So what we did was we requested already for specific data invoking that data sharing agreement. So we will see in the coming weeks what comes out of that request.
So, Commissioner, when the United Nations HRC resolution came out, I think in October, citing all the efforts, most of which is led by the DOJ, what did you think of it? Kasi this data sharing agreement was cited, the drug war review was cited, all to, have a softer stance on the human rights problem, which is just to offer technical assistance. What did you think about that?
Well, of course, no. What we have maintained in the adoption of this Human Rights Council resolution on technical cooperation and capacity building is that it does not operate in a vacuum. It comes from context. And that context is the report rendered and delivered by the Office of the High Commissioner, the High Commissioner herself, saying that there is acute impunity in the country. There must be accountability. There must be a demonstration of credible efforts towards finding the perpetrators, punishing them. So there must be that. So we're saying is that, yes, it's good that there is a technical cooperation and capacity building, but we did convey the disappointment of the human rights community because what was being asked of the Human Rights Council at the time was to extend the mandate of the High Commissioner to continue reporting on the situation of the Philippines in succeeding Human Rights Council sessions. But that did not materialize. What materialized was the technical cooperation resolution.
Yeah. When I asked the Justice Secretary about, trying to involve the CHR more in the drug war review panel, or if he considers including the drug war review in the data sharing agreement, what he told me was he'll ask daw muna the other agencies involved in the review, which of course includes the PNP, the policemen, the people who are being investigated. So is that the reason why they probably don't want you involved?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. But the fact remains that the PNP has been reticent. They've been resisting cooperation, and cooperation has been, it's not lack of cooperation, there's no cooperation, particularly on this issue. So we hope that they will open up because it's not yet, it's not yet too late. There can still be avenues for the victims and their families to seek justice. That's why we said that this report must be publicized. This report must be open to other independent mechanisms, to fresh eyes looking at the analysis, because it's not only, of course, it's important, case by case. It's important to know each and every case, what happened here, but it's also important to be able to track and analyze the trend in these numbers, the trend of this cohort, no, of cases, and to be able to analyze what happened. If there was indeed, heavy, excessive use of force, of lethal force, if there could have been other measures implemented. And then we need an independent monitor. We need fresh eyes to be able to take a look at what they have as well. And I've said this in the past, no? We see there, if there are cases we've seen, and this is part of the report of the High Commissioner. When you say that this is part of legitimate police operations, it does not mean that any deaths arising out of legitimate police operations can be considered a justified killing. Nananlaban. Hindi yun eh. We have to take a look at it eh. We have to take a look at each and every case. When you have an unarmed suspect in the company of 2, 3, 4 police officers, and then suddenly this a person in custody finds himself dead with wounds that are located at these are lethal wounds. Wala man lang warning shot, let's say, or wala, hardly do we find any person in custody that has survived, let's say, a wound because nanlaban, there was a gunfight. I was also telling the other reporter earlier that when we take a look at each and every case, was this really a shootout? Ang sinasabi ng iba, baka rub out. Titingnan din natin how credible or incredible the stories are arising out of these cases. All of this must be examined.
Commissioner, mandate-wise kasi diba, the CHR is mandated to investigate state violations. Kapag in-involve kayo ng DOJ, syempre ang lens nyo, may abuso ba? Parang
yes.
It's a different lens than what they're looking at. So it's a crucial lens to have in that review.
Yes, and again, what we say here is that we're not really into criminal investigation per se. It's a human rights investigation. So the human rights lens is actually used, and as you said, we will take a look at was there exertion of excessive force? Was there always, yan, yung mga tinitingnan natin na regulations, na follow ba yung regulations? In the High Commissioner's report, they were able to examine a handful of cases that had templated answers, cut and paste, and even using the same serial numbers of the guns. Where are those cases? At least yon tingnan natin, di ba? Kung nagpo-proceed ba yon sa courts. Because if you take a look at it, napakakonte. There are very, very few cases that have actually been located in the advanced stage of the justice system. And then if you take a look at the length of time by which a trial is undertaken, I read on one study, if my memory serves me right, it takes about 5 to 8 years. And if you take a look at the case of Kian de los Santos, that was very good because it was undertaken in a very short period of time because there was a video and they couldn't deny it anymore. In fact, they denied it at first, and they were their assertions were belied by the fact that when people saw the video, their story was totally different.
Yung point mo, Commissioner, about how so few of these cases have reached advanced stages in the investigation or in the court, I believe that's a very, very important point to make because that would answer the question if our local system is investigating this enough, which is probably the umbrella question naman ng lahat. Ginagawa ba natin ang lahat ng dapat kailangan or magagawa natin para imbestigahan? And the answer seems to be no.
I'll give you an example. This is a recent case where there's another video that revealed the action of a police officer. This is Senior Master Sergeant Nuesca. When the news broke out, of course, people had the first, front row seat to what transpired. And clearly it showed that this person executed the mother and the son. No? But when we think about it, lumabas yung kanyang rap sheet. And his rap sheet included 2 cases in 2019, May and December, that involved grave abuse of discretion. And it involved homicide. Now, my question there is that, kasama ba yan dun sa mga killings na nangyari? That's a question, a legitimate question to ask.
Right.
Others, when they saw that list, said, how did he survive with all these cases? In fact, even Senator Lacson was saying grave abuse of discretion. You're supposed to be dismissed if you're accused of this. And these are the things that we need to really take a look at. Now, it's funny because I think it was the PNP chief who said, oh, don't address him as Senior Master Sergeant. He was just demoted for a case that was decided upon from a case of 2014. If you take a look at that particular timeline, 2014, and he was actually demoted in October 2020, you see only just the investigation portion of it that actually just demoted him. And it took 6 years already. So that tells you already that the timeline is against those who want to seek justice and remedy.
Right. To share also that list of the past cases against Sergeant Nuesca that was shared by the PNP, it says administrative cases. So I wanted to know kung meron din bang criminal complaint na homicide na na-file sa kanya. And has that been acted upon? But mga 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago na yung tanong ko yun, wala pa ring sagot sa akin ang Prosecutor General at ang DOJ.
It's good to inquire whether the homicides are actually connected with a campaign against illegal drugs and police operations. No? But it's funny, if you take a look at the last column on that, it says that at least the 2 latest ones says that it was dismissed for insufficiency of evidence. So that means that, and that's an administrative case. So I suppose if that's the case for an admin case, then more so with the criminal. Diba?
Right. So ang count po ng government sa deaths in police anti-drug operations is more than 5,000. Alin dun po, by your sheer effort, ang nakuhanan nyo na ng case files?
Okay, I cannot, hindi yan one-to-one, no? But I do have some figures here.
Okay.
The ones that total EJ case that have been handled is 3,273. Now, we're still in the process of trying to determine. Of course, we don't know those 5,000. We don't have a copy of the report, diba? But one thing we know, of all the cases that we have handled, we have been monitoring. 67 are at the court level. 20 are at the prosecution level. We have 9 in the internal affairs service, and then 28 with the ombudsman. Right. So these are still, these are numbers that are moving. Kumbaga, moving target siya kasi iba-iba. Now, if we had that report, then we can compare with ours and see the unique names there, see the patterns. Ilan ba yung mga police na palaging nasasangkot sa ganitong klaseng and those are the analysis that we need. Who are those police officers who are often involved in a police operation that results in a death? Right.
And anong distrito, anong police station? Baka
so
may
you map it out where, but I think the Secretary of Justice in one interview said that they concentrated, I believe, on Pampanga, I think, was
Sam
one of the areas.
Bulacan and Pampanga. Kasi he said that because there was a coronavirus, there was a pandemic, ganyan, parang nag-sample sizing na lang sila just to be able to come up with this partial report. Commissioner, balikan ko lang. So dun sa 3,000 where you have bit of details, paano nyo po yun nakuha? Families na lumalapit sa inyo, lawyers? How did you get all
Ganito, no? And I think this still holds true, no? At the beginning, maybe first year, if you take a look at our entry points for the complaints, most of them are actually motu proprio, meaning that we did it on our own. We read about it in media, and then we went to investigate.
Right.
Because that is actually, in our analysis and in our reading, that is an indicator that people are really afraid to report. In fact, when you go back to the neighborhoods where the families used to live, hindi mo na sila mababalikan doon because they all left already. So that's something that we see as a pattern also. Most of these people just go to the provinces, go back to the province, or just move to other places kasi napapag-initan na sila doon. And then of course, not to mention they're ostracized, and then others are afraid. So that's the case. So we need to really explore all these cases, no? But for our list, that holds true, no? That normally they leave the place already.
In our last update, Commissioner, the Secretary of Justice said, moving forward from this partial report, going to their final report, i-include niya na daw kayo. Naniniwala po ba kayo dito sa pangakong to?
Well, we're hopeful. Again, as I've said, no, our doors are always open. We're ready to cooperate. We'll be happy to cooperate. And I hope that this time around, they will include us.
All right, this is a question in my opening, how I opened the Rappler Talk, and I would like to have your thoughts on it. So did the DOJ mislead the UNHRC when they, nung ginamit nilang CHR and then did not include you in the partial review?
Let's just say it still remains an unfulfilled promise.
Right.
Now, if there will be considerable time, and there has been considerable time that has passed, no? But we do hope that sooner rather than later we get to be involved in this review panel because we have a lot to share as well.
Last question, Commissioner. So I think it was 2 days ago when they made the announcement that a partial report has been submitted, and it was also 2 days ago when you issued a statement that says na hindi pa kayo na-involved. Has the DOJ reached out to you since that time?
Not that I know of. I was just with the chairperson earlier today. None. No feedback as of yet.
Right. So as we watch how the drug war review will proceed, we should also closely watch if the CHR will be included as they had promised the international community. Thank you. That was Human Rights Commissioner Karen Gomez Dumpit. I am Lian Buon. Thank you for watching Rappler Talk.